Now open Mary, Our Lady of Peace Mausoleum in Flushing, New York. Secure your family's future with 10% down, no taxes, and 0% interest financing for up to 10 years on pre-need crypts and cremation niches starting at just $25 per month. Protect your loved ones with the gift of pre-planning. Visit them today at Mount St. Mary Cemetery. Call 718-353-1560. That's 718-353-1560 or go to ccbklyn.org to learn more. That's ccbklyn.org.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Joining us now to talk about all of this enormous news today is Professor Alan Dershowitz, the great legal scholar. Professor Dershowitz, first let's get to the Eric Adams, and we have so much on Israel we want to get to, but Eric Adams was arraigned. He was in court, and he said, I am not guilty. What do you make of where the case is now and the dragnet, the 800 number we were just talking about, that they're soliciting everybody and their brother to come forward?
And some will come forward, and people will make deals, and some people will sing, and others might compose to, get benefits from the government. Look, this is a case where the factual evidence of him doing things that he shouldn't have done is very great. Whether it qualifies under the very, very narrow federal statutes that govern political corruption is a difficult question. The Supreme Court and other courts have scaled back the scope of federal corruption, particularly corruption cases. They've reversed a number of convictions involving some very prominent people, many of whom did things that require us not to vote for them. But there's a big difference between misconduct and criminal conduct. And I think this is going to be a very hard case for the government to prove based on the indictment that I've read and what I've seen so far. But I don't have a lot of time, so I really want to turn to Israel.
Yeah, please. This is huge news.
Prime Minister Netanyahu. I was with him, and I was with his national security advisor, Ron Dermer, a good friend, when they began to get the news of the attack and whether or not the attack had managed to kill Nasrallah. And, of course, we all asked Bibi, well, did you get him or not? And he was like a sphinx. I mean, he wouldn't answer. He basically made a hand motion that suggested, patience, take your time. We're going to look at this very carefully. And then I heard from another source, well, the Israelis are using all their intelligence to investigate, to see whether they can confirm. But at the moment, they can't confirm. What they can confirm is there was, they believe, a very high likelihood that he was in the building at the time the attack occurred, and that it would be very difficult to survive the kind of attack if he was in the building. That's a little short of complete certainty, but it certainly sounds like good news for every American who should be thrilled at the death of the man who killed 240 of our Marines. Anybody who supports Israel who should be thrilled at the death of somebody who swore the destruction of Israel. And every decent person in the world should be thrilled that this guy was killed. It would be the best thing. It would be better than Osama bin Laden. Let me tell you why. Osama bin Laden, when he was killed, was a has-been. He wasn't doing anything. He was just hiding. It was important to get him because of what he had done. But Nasrallah is in the middle of killing people. And so if he's killed, it will save lives. It will save many, many, many lives. And it would be a great blessing for the world. I hope it's true.
Yeah, Professor Alan Dershowitz, I'll tell you, when I cheered when I heard this news. I was so happy. You know how strongly I feel about Israel.
Bad news. Let me tell you some bad news. So I'm at the event at the UN, and half the countries walk out, and, people boo, and they hate Netanyahu. You would think that the United States ambassador to the United Nations would make it a point to show up to show support for Netanyahu. She wasn't there. I don't know whether she was at a sorority party with Kamala Harris, but she wasn't there. It was disgraceful. I saw the three gray suits, low-ranking people at the United Nations sitting there in the seats reserved for the American diplomats at the UN. The head should have been there, and I want to know why she wasn't there. Was this deliberate? Was this Kamala Harris having a sorority party instead of listening to Netanyahu make his speech in front of Congress? Or was this, maybe a health issue? Or I'm not making an accusation. I'm just saying it's a question, and I want to know the answer. If this administration made a deliberate decision not to send their chief ambassador to the UN to listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I think we need to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I agree. That is disgraceful. By the way, kudos to Netanyahu, who you were with today, Professor Dershowitz, for saying to also the UN, you are basically anti-Semitic bile, essentially. I mean, he really pointed the finger and said, you're not a UN. You have become so politicized and so weakened.
It was so clear from what we heard. We heard the president of Slovenia. Slovenia, you'd think they worry about their own problems, putting all the blame on Israel. Then, of course, Pakistan. Oh, my God. Israelis are terrorists. Am I not mistaken that Pakistan hid Osama bin Laden for all the years when they finally got him? It was in Pakistan. These hypocritical countries they have one thing in common. They all hate Israel. And I just never want to see the United States join that. And the United States should have gone out of its way, not only to have Mrs. Greenfield, the permanent representative to the UN there, but in a very visible way to make it clear. She should have stood up and applauded, as I did, and as many other people who came to support Bibi Netanyahu did. So I spent some good quality time with him and with his wife. You know, they're old friends. I've known Bibi since the early 1970s, so how old we both are. And I've been to every one of his speeches at the UN. This was one of the very best.
Absolutely. One of the most important, I think, too. Ed Cox.
So, Professor, analyze for us, after all, this is all about Iran in the end.
Sure.
What does all this mean with respect to Iran and Israel and where they are at this point and where it might go?
Well, I think that Israel has sent a message to Iran. It was stated very clearly in the speech today at the UN, if you do what you did in April, if you attack us, we're going to come and destroy your nuclear program. We're going to come and we're going to attack you. And that's the best thing they could do, would be to destroy the nuclear program. And so I think Israel has sent a very powerful message to Iran. Don't. But I think the difference between Israel and Biden is when Biden says don't, he doesn't back it up. And when Israel says don't, they do back it up. So I'm hoping is that Iran will be deterred. But if they're not, Israel should have every justification for going in and setting back their nuclear program by at least a decade.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great points. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you on such a busy day where you were there with the Prime Minister. We love you, and let's pray that we get that confirmation on Nasrallah. Thank you.
That would be a blessing.
It sure would be for the world. Thank you, Professor.